Welcome to Round the
Hi.
Table, a planetary classroom beyond the 2D frame. We are in the main campus of the Bartlett UCL 22 Gordon Street entrance. So this is a series of experimental VR roundtable events that brings together educators, students, and software groups who are working and learning interdisciplinarily between the virtual and the physical. So we will be discussing the future of our education and the tools that interface us. So we are the organizer of the event. I am Professor Ng, currently teaching at the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL.
Yes, I'm Alberto Fernandez, a PhD candidate from the Bartlett School, as well as tutor from here and professor at the University of Chile. From the lessons that we are having learned in the past year, can we imagine a more sustainable, inclusive, interactive, and accessible educational environment that help us to communicate beyond the 2D frame? Most importantly, how would this shift bring changes to our urban environment and the way in which by which we are distributing tasks between the virtual and a physical life? The idea of a global virtual local physical suggests us a search into the prospect of knowledge sharing at the planetary scale, for sure, beyond disciplinary and geographical borders.
Exactly. So each event, we will have a different sub-theme for the roundtable. Today, we will be discussing the Phygital in education. This roundtable will be in two parts, which discusses Phygital, application in education, and the potential impacts on our built environment. So with contributors and guests engaged in the interaction and exchange between the physical and the digital, including developing Phygital tools, sharing Phygital skills, to hosting events via Phygital means, this roundtable explored the processes of how the Phygital is taught and how the Phygital help us in teaching. So a lot of Phygital. Basically, it would ask, would the concept of virtually global, locally physical accelerate an evolution in the traditional socioeconomic models of education? And what form might it take? Would it be open source, proprietary, etc.?
We would like to give our sincere thanks to all of guests who contributed with their effort to this time and for sure knowledge to these activities. And as well, the UCL Research List Initiative Award, which is supporting this and funding this event. We will be starting the event today with an opening talk with Professor Roberto Botassi, who is here. And then each guest will give us a Pechacucha presentation of their work in different rooms, followed by 40 minutes roundtable discussion here again. The event will last a total of 2 hours, hopefully. Without any further delay, let me introduce Professor Roberto Botas. Roberto is an architect, researcher, and educator based in London. He's the program director of the Master in Urban Design at the Bartlett School of Architecture. Previously, he was design tutor and research coordinator at the Royal College of Art. He studied at the University of Florence, Italy, and at the University of British Columbia, Canada, before moving to UK, London. His research analyzes the impact of digital technologies on architecture and urbanism. His notable publications include Digital Architecture Beyond Computers, Fragmented of a Cultural History of Computational Design, published with Bloomsbury. He has lectured and exhibited internationally, including UK, USA, China, Italy, and Portugal. He was visiting professor as well at the Polytechnic of Milan and visiting tutor at the Innovation Design Engineering at the Royal College of Arts. Let's us welcome to Professor Roberto Botassi to this stage.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. So I'm supposed to, I think, reach the lantern.
Yes,
I'm asking if have I accomplished that or
almost. If you would just take
all
one step forward and look at
more
me,
forward.
yeah,
Yes,
that would be great.
That's it.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
That's
I'm the
it. I
camera.
would like, yeah, is and I think I'm seeing most of you as much as possible. So, and final check is whether you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Good,
Yes,
good, good, good.
yes, we can hear you
Excellent.
without
So
problems.
perfect. Well, first of all, thanks. Thank you very much to Provides and Alberto to not only organize this event, but also for involving me as part of this series of explorations they are going to carry out on the future of learning and also its relationship to the digital. They mentioned, they were very kind in introducing me and sort of listing all series of activities, but there's one I think that perhaps may be relevant here as well, which is my interest for the history and present of digital architecture, which may have, I think, some provides, let's say, some sort of interesting thoughts for the conversation that will unfold throughout the next 2 hours. It's interesting because Phygital, the notion of Phygital is primarily a notion that has been developed within the commercial world. It's not a notion that, or a category, let's say, that has been primarily developed from within academia. So it's not born out of theoretical debate. It's born out of a kind of slightly different sets of agendas, which I think is very promising, very positive, and also somehow puts us academics into a position to keep up, let's say, with the innovations and the concepts that are emerging from the world of practice. So I think that I will try to perhaps give it a slightly more architectural and theoretical connotation to this kind of to the notion of the Phygital. First of all, I think that we're all coming from a very interesting year in which we taught for the entire duration of the academic year online, and have done so, I think, taking advantage of the interdisciplinary, planetary quality that provides, just spoke of a minute ago, extensively. At the Bartlett, we held juries that involved between 200 to over 1,000 people that connected from different parts of the planet to see discussions and presentations from students. Now, we all know that as students, we may have the chance for our project to be seen by 50, 100 people, perhaps throughout the duration of our course of studies, whereas the phygital space, or in this case, the pure digital space, allowed us to reach thousands of people multiple times throughout the single year. So that is in itself an incredible opportunity that I think that should not be left go wasted. And as we now return to some form of physical interaction, it will be important, I think, to retain these incredible opportunities that have opened up before us. I think that somehow it's the development, as I said, of digital tools, of technological tools that has generated the digital space, but now it's also, of course, the impact of the pandemic that has a tremendous impact on how we experience the domestic and the urban, how the two interact together, and therefore how education can unfold between these two realms. Somehow technologically, we know that the question of what and how are becoming much easier. What we can do with technology and how easy we can do it is increasingly becoming accessible to people and to staff and students. The question of why, remains, I think, the really difficult one and the really interesting one. And for that, I think academia should take a kind of active role in shaping it. So, as I said, the relationship in the pandemic between the city and our living rooms has totally changed. And it was, I think, so very surprising to see how quickly we changed it. You could say, well, we had no other choice. That is correct, practically speaking, but I don't think is enough to explain the transformation. Somehow, the speed at which all this changed and the speed at which I think all this worked indicates that we were prepared for it. Yeah, we might not have had the pressure to do it, but intellectually and technologically, I think we were in a position to switch. So in a way, I think there are several moments, in fact, in the history of architecture in which these moments have occurred, which I think are useful to keep in mind as we try to sketch the future of phygital space. Yeah. So here, super quickly, I've identified, I think, three moments. They are not particularly related to one another, but I thought there were three interesting moments just to put on the table for the discussion. The first one is taking place sometimes between the end of Mannerism and the early Baroque period, where we see a great proliferation of a type of painting called sfondato. Sfondato means pushed through, and it's basically the painting, a type of fresco that is normally used in palaces and churches to expand, let's say, the physical dimension of space by painting a series of architectural objects, all all designed to be perceived from a specific point of view. So you probably know the famous sfondato of Palazzo Barberini in Rome, but it's only perhaps one of the best and largest examples of a very widespread idea of expanding the physical space of architecture through virtual means. Of course, the sfondato is perspectival. The sfondato still has a certain relationship between the subject and the object, the subject that perceives and the object that is represented, that is articulated through perspective. Whereas in this kind of space we are in at the moment, of course, perspective is still largely an artifact that can be overcome. The space in itself is not perspectival to begin with, and its non-perspectival qualities could constitute an area for further experimentation and research. Another moment, I think, is constituted by the work of Kiesler, of Friedrich Kiesler. So we move quite quickly in time to the 20th, first part of the 20th century, where Kiesler and his ideas of correalism explored the idea of space as a fully voxelized space, I would say. That is a space that is completely full of information, and in which the distinction between subject and object really does not exist anymore. Yeah, from the interior of the subject to the space surrounding it, to the psychological and the material, all these ideas are woven together in Kiesler's manifesto and in some of the projects that he also managed to develop. I'm not necessarily thinking of the Endless House, but mostly to the Art of the Century exhibition, in which this idea of space as a solid, as a continuum container of information was developed. Yeah. So the subject-object relationship vanishes, and then not too many years after that, Andrea Branzi defines the city as every environment in which we can find a computer every 12 square meters. Yeah? So the city, in a way, collapses spatially, now both in terms of the subject-object relationship as well as in terms of perspectival, to become a fluid environment in which form and experience merge together. Now, the city with a computer every 12 square meters is probably outdated now. We probably have such a distribution of computational devices in our life that probably is not even every 12 square meters, but probably that value has lowered furthermore. But I think one interesting thing is that in Branzi's image, computation is an uniform grid. Yeah, the idea of that every 12 square meters implies an equal spacing of objects, and therefore the final figure emerging is a grid. And I think this is also an interesting area to question, because somehow the grid is perhaps not the right metaphor, or the right, let's say, visual metaphor for this kind of world. We don't really live in a grid which implies equal abstract distribution of resources to everybody on the planet. The grid is really, in fact, much more a series of clusters in which perhaps, um, as, uh, um, as anticipated by cyberpunk's writers, suggest that the future is already here, but not evenly distributed. So, in conclusion, I just want to the idea of bringing some um, historical architectural examples to the conversation is useful because I think that if the development, the trying to answer the question why, that as I was saying earlier, in the development of the phygital space will probably hinge more on the idea of architecturalize digital space and digital technologies rather than the other way around, that is trying to let architecture become similar to computer science or to technology that is appropriating. So I think that in that sense, the history of the profession is still useful to indicate openings and ways of thinking that will, um, like I said, will let architects shape this space and inject, let's say, uh, ideas that have dotted the history of our discipline for a very long time. So these were some of the initial remarks, and I hope that the conversation will unfold and reach some interesting kind of outcomes in term, or at least ideas on how these relationships could be uh, molded and affecting how we will be teaching in the future. I look forward to the next 2 hours of conversation. And again, thank you very much, Alberto and Provides.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for a very beautiful analysis of rethinking whether we're architecturalizing digital space or digitizing architectural space. And I'm sure it will be a good start to our roundtable. So, really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Without further delay, next we have guests from Mozilla Hub's Matt Cool. Matt Be Cool. So for that, we will move to his VR space that he architectured for us. So please, if you would follow me this way.
Yes. Hello. Hello, what's the portal? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I added a purple ocean.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I will introduce you. Um,
Sure.
let's just wait for 2 seconds. Very beautiful space. Cool. So, hi everyone. Let me introduce Matt before we start. So, Matt Cool is developer relations engineer at Mozilla Hubs, a web platform where people can gather, share, and collaborate together in virtual private spaces. So, Matt is a web generalist and interested in immersive design and creating more accessible experiences in education and training, much exemplified by this space. So, let us give a big clap to Matt.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you much.
So I'll try to go through this presentation kind of kind of quickly, and then if anyone has any questions, maybe I can get to them at some point. But let's just start. Let's begin with a quick Likert scale, and this is going to sort of exemplify a few things about how we perceive the physical space here, and hopefully we could see it as a nice working example, and it could be a source of inspiration for some of you. So real quickly, let me just ask everybody, how are you feeling about movement right now? So one is you're having a lot of trouble with movement, and then five is you're feeling very confident with moving around in this space. So if you can position your avatar near one of these numbers, just to start, and I think it might be a nice, fun activity to start out with. So, how are you? And the question being, how do we feel about movement? And how confident are you?
We're the expert in movement.
Yes, exactly. You have
Ali,
to-
Alberto, and I. And
I'm good at
fake.
two.
Yes.
There's no in between. It's either you're really good or you're really bad.
I wanted 2.5.
Are David, they're feeling
Hi,
kind of in
Michael.
between, or Tammy, you're feeling kind of in between.
I'm thinking that.
Hi.
Nice.
All right, and so this is
Congratulations.
a great, so we can see now.
You are here.
Michael, I think there's some sound from your microphone.
Where everybody, oh yeah, and that's a good point. Real quick sound note: if you're wearing if you have headphones, that's a really good practice for hubs because sometimes your audio can pick up from another, like from the other source. Your mic will pick up from the audio output, and then it will create some feedback. So yeah, I always recommend headphones. And then also, if you press spacebar, if you're on a desktop, you can actually turn up the volume of anybody and turn down the volume of anybody. And that could also be helpful. So if you're having trouble hearing a particular person, you can manually press spacebar and turn them up.
Mm.
Quick tips. All right, but let me move into the next feature I wanted to introduce, and just as a series of features that I hope to inspire you all with. This is called the spawner, and I want to just give some of you already found it, but I just want to give everybody a duck to begin. So I'm just going to be passing out some ducks, and you can go ahead and interact with these ducks. Just kind of a thank you for being here.
Back.
Yeah, and you can, I mean, feel free, if you want to throw your duck, you're welcome to.
The physics is great.
So this is called the spawner, and I actually have gravity set to the duck now, so it will be doing some weird things, but typically the objects will just float, but you can adjust that. So we have a spawner here. Here's another feature we have, and let me share. Let's see, I don't actually have something interesting, but we could just share like a picture here. All right. So that's called a spawner. Here is a media frame over here. So this lets us just position something, right? And then, yeah, you can move stuff around there. So we have these two objects. Right, so you could throw whatever you want up there. I have this reversed, but it doesn't really matter. So we have a spawner and a media frame. So these two objects. So let's look at real quickly how we can combine these two objects into something that might actually be useful to us, say in education, for example. So if you see this first sort of slide I have set up over here, if we walk this way. These are actually just 3 spawners, just like the duck that we saw earlier. These words, heartwarming, thought-provoking, crowd pleasers. So here we have sort of an English learning exercise. And if we continue on, we can see that the student is in VR, and they're just selecting a word that are just spawners, like a duck, and then they're placing it into a media frame. So something I hope to introduce to you all is this idea of combining these different elements in sort of interesting ways. And I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface in ways that we can combine these things. So part of my presentation, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, is that we could take these features and just sort of mix them up and mash them up and get some interesting interactions.
All right, Matt, and what happens when the spawner goes in the media frame exactly?
Yeah, so then that object will just clip into the place there. So that media frame is the red part. So it will just kind of clip in this place, yeah.
And then maybe spawn something else.
Yeah, and you could spawn as many those words as you'd like.
Got it.
So yeah, so just wanted to introduce that kind of concept of that we can combine these different things together to produce interesting results. But I wanted to kind of also move into more closely related to our topic of this kind of how we interact with the real world in the digital world. And so I have some examples of how we did so in hubs. This is a group called REM5 in the video here, and they created this physical art gallery that is actually a digital hubs room. So you can see people walking around the art gallery, checking out the art in the physical space, and you can see what it looks like inside of hubs. So that's out of Minneapolis there. And then if you look around the islands, now when we start to get into these island territory, these are all custom instances of hubs. So this is where people took hubs and created added their own custom code to do some physical, digital sort of examples. So let's go to the first island, and we have a way to jump over there if you're not comfortable with flying yet. That is this little navigation here, this link, and you should, when you hover over it on desktop, you should see a go to, and if you click that, you'll hop over to the island. So let's hop over now. Everyone making it okay? Nice.
Yep, perfect.
Yep.
Where was, sorry, you said something a hop to?
Oh yeah. It's there's a little go to. Here, let me fly over there. Yeah, you can fly too, Deb. You're already a pro flyer, but
Devi,
I'll get there eventually. Don't wait for me.
Devi, you accidentally changed into Matt.
Oh yeah, that's okay. I see I have some clones.
I will put your avatar out so you will change back.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Can you change?
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I was just like looking at the wrong Matt the entire time.
So another example we have, this is Fabian Bonato, who's a prototyper, does a lot of interesting work. And he created this, one example here is this cycling. So this is like another way we can bridge physical and digital, right? And he created this kind of track where he's got a physical machine that cycles, like a pedal machine. And then he's pedaling, and that's controlling the locomotion of his avatar. So that's kind of fun, and that's also networkable. So you can be socially cycling with your friends. And then we have another example that Fabian did here with a light that he's controlling in the room that corresponds to a real physical light in his office, which is kind of fun too.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, let's move on to the next one since I think I'm already like getting to time. So the next island that we'll hop to is going to be through this go-to link right here. Right, made it to the next island. Nice. All right, so on this island, this was a dance performance that was done live, and all the avatars are moving to a particular area, and that area corresponds to a motion sensor that's on the performer's legs and arms. So when there is a certain level of avatars that are on a certain area, then the dancer is cued by that sensor to perform with that limb. So yeah, just another interesting way to bridge physical and digital, and then the dancer is being streamed into the room so that live, so everybody can watch the performance live.
Oh, I love that. It's like collectively controlling a physical body through digital
Yes,
spaces.
exactly.
It's awesome.
All right, and let's quickly move on to the next island, and then this will be our last little physical and digital example.
There's no need to rush. We're actually 15 minutes early. But anyway.
Oh, we are?
Yes, we are way earlier than
I
expected.
was like 6 minutes. Let's go. Okay, well that's all right. We'll have questions and everything.
Yeah, we'll have time for some questions.
And this next one, make sure everybody made it. Yep. Oh, we're getting really good at island hopping, everybody. So this next one is Valencia James, and she's a performer doing a volumetric performance. So this is capturing, which provides, figured out it was a Connect, using a Connect, but they're capturing the data there with a Connect and then streaming it live into Hub's room. And if you're having trouble with that link like I am, you can just open the link in a new window, and then that should, you'll be able to watch it there. Yeah, just some examples of how we could bridge physical and digital in Hubs, and then a couple of examples, hopefully to inspire you with different constraints we have in Hubs, like the spawner and the media frame element. So thanks so much, and I'm available for questions. I guess I went kind of fast, huh?
Yeah, we're actually 10 minutes early, so if anyone has any question for Matt, this would be the time.
And this was a live performance here, the streaming one?
Yes.
The volumetric.
Yeah, this one was live, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Is that streaming live in scope, or is this like added on the front end of Hubs?
Yeah, so this is a custom client, so they had to change some things about the code to allow for this to happen, and I'm not sure exactly what they did, but it's streaming live in Hubs, so they're actually doing, yeah, just like we are here.
And could you navigate the space, their volumetric 3D space, or it shows as a flat screen for the viewer?
Yeah. So you'd be able to, and I think the video.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it shows. Yeah, you can see the people
Right.
watching. Yeah, you can just move around freely
Cool.
and get a sense of the depth and the model and things like that.
Yeah, I think last time I asked a question, which I think you gave quite an interesting answer, was like, why did Mozilla Hubs choose to use .glb format as your main 3D data format?
Oh yeah, so GLTF. Yeah, and I'm curious because I know we have Houdini and also people from there's other design tools here as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really curious about what support is available there for GLTF. This is kind of the de facto standard for the web right now, and I'd love to hear from all of you about what you think about support for that, and like because I'm always interested in finding tools that will help me to build things in Hubs and to help me build things for the web. So yeah, GLTF, and then GLB is just the binary form, the non-human readable form of that. So when you hear GLTF and GLB,
It seemed pretty seamless on our end, right, Ellie?
Yeah, I mean, Houdini has great export tools for GLB and USDZ, which I find better for AR, but I'm curious if that's going to be implemented in Mozilla Hubs. And what do you think about the differences between USDZ and GLB? Because they seem like they're kind of competing, or are they complementary? Yeah.
I see GLTF as the winner sort of de facto for web right now. So yeah, for web stuff, I think that's, and I think with GLTF, it's just like web developers, I think, are really familiar with the format. This is kind of a JSON object that we can manipulate, and yeah, I don't know a lot about USDZ, so but yeah.
I assume animation can be baked in there as well.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you can just make that part of the like we have like a loop animation object, and yeah, you can bake in animation and animation tracks and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah. I think what Ali mentioned about USDC, it's interesting because GLB builds on .json is basically open source 3D data structure, and USDC is basically proprietary, but both of them are trying to breach every software that are out there right now. So
Yeah, I recently did an AR project and had to use both a USDZ and GLB for the web version because it opens, I think, differently on Android and iOS devices.
yeah. So it does seem the future is on multi-accessibility. Cool. If we
Two
have,
platforms at once. Yeah.
do you have more
Sounds
questions for
exciting.
Matt, or else we will move on to the next?
Anything you can talk about the future, what you guys are developing, or is that just top secret?
No, it's pretty we're pretty out in the open about most of our tasks. At the Discord, we'll talk openly about our development in Discord. We're on GitHub, and yeah, everything's there. For the most part. So yeah, I think we really try to, especially like even design decisions and things like that. We'll talk about it in our Discord channels that are public. So yeah, we welcome everyone to be part of that conversation, and we're definitely big on open source, and we like to try to use open source tooling, and we definitely try to keep it open.
I
Very
have
exciting.
a question that relates to that. I don't know if it's top secret, but I've always been curious, how does Mozilla Hubs get away with making all of these tools free and open source for people? Like, what is the funding?
I actually wanted to ask the same.
Yeah, well, that is kind of an issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to pay the bills at some point, right? So we are working on that. So that is part of the top secret part, and we're definitely there's definitely efforts to survive. Yeah, because I think that at a certain point, right, we have to keep the lights on. So it's definitely a part of the plan right now.
But I feel like Hubs, it's under Mozilla, which is like a larger ecology of different digital tools that like hook onto each other. Yeah. But what I find amazing is that actually the Hubs team only has 12, 14 people. So it's a pretty slim.
Yeah, I think we're up to 15 or something.
Wow.
We recently added a bunch. Like I'm a newbie to the team, but the core team is very small.
Yeah, very
Small
amazing.
power team. Awesome. You've made such a cool tool. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Matt. It's great to have you here explaining all the features to us. Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Shall we move?
Yeah,
Alberto, should we move to the next room?
Yes, let's go to the next one.
It's just here.
The rainbow. Fix the rainbow.
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
Wait, I will introduce you because you're our guest. So
Okay,
steady. Cool. I mean, welcome to the second room. So before we start, let me introduce our speaker from Houdini School, Deborah and Ali. So Deborah Isaac is a visual artist, animator, and the founder of Houdini.school. She loves community building, hosts Houdini battles, and co-organized the Los Angeles Houdini user group, LA HUC. She has over 8 years of experience teaching Houdini and currently teaches at Drexel University. She is passionate about scientific visualization, motion graphics, and emerging technologies. Her clients have included Intel, Metal, and UCLA ArtSci Center. So Ali Jotiva is a Bulgarian intermediate artist and researcher based in LA. With a practice rooted in photography and digital media, she is influenced by contemporary research in the fields of quantum mechanics, neurophysics, and machine vision. She holds an MFA from UCLA Design, Media Arts, and has exhibited internationally in venues like Arts Electronica. She is currently professor at Houdini.school, VR Gallery Director and Curator at Super Collider Gallery, and co-founder of Current.cam. So welcome, Deborah and Ali. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting us. and the UCLA Art Science Center is where Ellie and I met on a project, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Ellie. And now we're friends.
And we're best friends ever since. Yeah.
So yeah, I am the founder of Houdini School. Super excited to be here. Before I even get into that, I just want to explain what Houdini is without kind of showing you a bunch of images. You can actually see this rainbow here that we're all kind of on right now. And one way to explain it is just, you know, a 3D content creation tool like other ones you guys know about, Blender, Maya, 3D Max, etc. But Houdini is known for something a little different. It's known for its power in proceduralism, and that's why I kind of jumped ship about 10 years ago from Maya. I was just so amazed by its capabilities. And just to kind of explain it briefly, imagine, you know, you can work interactively, right? Just like a sculptor, you sculpt in 3D, you make a model, you texture it and all that. But at that point, it's kind of like that's it. You know, you've got that one model, like a chair, for example. But in Houdini, let's say you want to make a chair, you can work interactively like that, or you can make a system that could generate 1,000 chairs, 1,000 different chairs. So for example, in this rainbow, it just only took a couple nodes, like 5 or 6 nodes. You make networks with nodes. And I generated maybe 100 different of these rainbows, and I chose the one I liked the best. So it's one way of working, and it may not sound art directable, but it is completely and totally art directable and generative at the same time. So I learned this software when I was in grad school. I learned about the software in grad school. They didn't teach it at my grad school. And, you know, completely changed my life. It really changes people's lives when they figure it out, because they're like, oh God, I got to learn a whole new thing now, but I got to do it because it's so cool. That you hear that a lot, or I do. And they didn't teach it at my grad school. I learned it at the software company at the time. And then I just started learning and teaching at the same time. And then I tried to find teaching jobs, and it was very hard. You know, the education market is saturated with these other 3D softwares. So it was hard to find teaching jobs. Students want it. And the only thing I could think of to do was to start my own school. So that's kind of where it all happened. And I'm really excited about it. It's traditionally known for, you know, doing large-scale destruction and huge pyro explosions. But my philosophy is more, I think Houdini needs to be used in every design, art, anywhere, architecture especially. You can make amazing worlds in it, which is why I'm super excited to get to know hubs more, especially as a teacher. And we'll talk about this more, because I'm realizing, you know, learning about 3D in 3D is super interesting to me. So I love teaching. I find that it's like giving back. And as you said, community building. I love bringing people together. So the school kind of is about all of that for me. People meeting other people. It's not like, oh, I'm in front of the YouTube learning about 3D software, not with anyone else, you know. But we're learning together. We're learning with people all over the world. It's, you know, global. And then once we have different verticals, like different industries, you know, there's animation, there's character animation, there are simulations. It's very heavy on the simulations. Then, you know, eventually, you know, creating all these learning paths, I do want to create a studio. I am an artist. I want to create. So the idea also is to bring people together to create community, to put people together. We all work on projects together, because there's a lot of learning in that too. And yeah, accessibility, and that was also mentioned. I want to make it affordable. I want the teachers to get a lot out of it. I want the students to get a lot out of it. So that's really my background and my motivation, and part of the vision. Yeah, any questions so far?
Maybe we can take questions with also
Ellie.
Ellie's perspective
Sure.
all together.
Yeah, Ellie,
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty much done, so you can go for it.
You don't want to talk about all the cool classes that are
Oh,
there right
right.
now that
Oh my gosh.
go sign up.
Sorry, Ellie. You're
The
so
main
right.
meat.
Let me fly to the course catalog over here. If I can get there, we'll find out.
So yeah, I'm sorry if everybody's stuck on the rainbow. You should all press /fly in the chat, and that'll help you fly if you're stuck.
Oh, you have to refly every time you.
Or they can press G. I think they add a hotkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. G on the keyboard. Yep.
Yes, we are flying now.
What a view, everybody on the rainbow.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, for reminding me. Yeah, so we have all kinds of different classes, and like I was saying, the procedural nature. If you look at the chandelier class, you can see that there's one chandelier system that can create a whole bunch of different ones. So it's just the power of it is really why people will make that investment and learn the software. And it's just really fun and it's hard, but it's worth it. High reward, high pain, high reward, and all kinds of things. Character simulation, really abstract things to a lot of abstract art. I mean, it can be used anywhere, right, Ellie? What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We've used it for a lot of scientific visualization, which is going to be a big track for me. And I think I've made a lot of friends like Ellie just because we want to learn the software and have fun together with it.
It's just a really great software for artists, I think, because it's node-based and it's very visual. So it's quick access to anybody who wants to get into it right away.
Especially if you have a crazy imagination and are super creative, it's like you can just do anything in it. And the way that you can bring data in, it's a big data program. You can bring in any kind of data from any discipline and do something with it. I mean, the city open city maps has this incredible feature, and you could bring up buildings. There's all these this information that gets baked onto the geometry, so you can raise the buildings according to the height. The height information is baked in. The street names, the addresses. It's really weird, actually, if you look at all that data. And with the kind of data that Ellie brings in with her work, all that the scanning that you did, Ellie, all that work you brought in, the data you brought in, and you kept crashing your computer because the data was so huge. But you managed to get something out in the end.
Optimization is key.
Yeah. and taking deep breaths.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also the AR that we're interested in, and the VR and the new technology. But it's very exciting. The future is very exciting. I wish I was learning it now for the first time. I'm very jealous of these 20-year-olds like picking it up right now. And yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Cool. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Shall we go over to see some of the work?
Over the rainbow.
Yeah. Can we fly over the other side of the rainbow? So first I'm going to stand maybe over here. Okay, so...
Oh, yeah.
All right. Cool. So thanks, Pro, for inviting us. Thank you also for the brief intro. So I'm an artist and researcher based in LA. And my practice takes a multidisciplinary approach between the digital and the physical. It often takes shape as alternative process photography, light installations, ephemeral sculptures, and more recently, digital sculptures that can be experienced in augmented reality. I tend to try to shed light on the forces and vibrations that exist outside our perception, but still influence us. And that's why I love using tools and technologies that allow us to peer deeper into the spaces we can't readily perceive with our own senses. And like Provides mentioned, I'm also a VR gallery curator and director for Super Collider, which is a collective in LA where we explore how art, science, and tech can collide to inspire social change and environmental change. And in the beginning of the pandemic, I discovered Mozilla Hubs and curated this big virtual show, which you can visit at some other point in time in this room here, which was called the Phenomenology of Hope. And I built it out with 49 different artists where we brought in physical works into a digital space, a museum experience in Mozilla Hubs. And then up here on the right, earlier this summer, I helped make a gallery for the UCLA Department of Media Arts for their Summer Institute, where they use Mozilla Hubs to present the student work after a 2-summer intensive program. So I recommend checking out these spaces because I think they're a cool way to experience artwork and cultural events in Mozilla Hubs in these VR spaces. But check them out later because if you look at them now, you're going to leave the room. And then if we fly down over here, I want to just quickly talk to you about some art projects that explore the relationship between the physical and the digital. So what you're looking at here, this giant sphere, is from my project Nemo Awari, which explores how memory is held within matter and how it's digitally archived and the connection between the two. So at the core of the project, I make these physical ice sculptures made of organic materials and other things from in different environments, kind of like landscape portraits, which I freeze and then I allow them to melt during exhibitions. But I also 3D scan them and preserve their kind of digital archive. So as the organic material falls apart, you have this digital archive presented on a large scale. And I also really like to use to find the connection between the two. So when I exhibit them together, I have a real-time contact mic that collects the dripping sounds and then feeds them into a VR experience where viewers could enter inside one of the spheres and see the drops of the melting, literally melting through time. And in fact, right now we can even fly in here and be like inside of it, which is kind of fun. If you want.
Whoa, I like this.
Whoa.
Crazy. I'm dizzy. Am I moving or is this thing moving?
Yeah, it's kind of gives you vertigo, but usually when I show it in VR, I have the real-time sound of the physical ice sphere melting and then glitching the 3D model in real time.
Crazy.
Which I haven't figured out how to do in Mozilla Hubs yet, but maybe one day with all these cool tools Matt showed.
Now you know,
Get
Matt.
there.
So
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna fly out of here and up to this blue one, which is a project that explored 3D scanning as an alternative to photography to answer the question, can I make an image using the invisible spectrum of light? So I combined two technologies from two eras for using two ends of the invisible light spectrum. That's infrared light used in contemporary 3D LiDAR scanners and the ultraviolet spectrum used in one of the oldest photographic methods, the cyanotype. So to do this, I scanned 5 living plants and with a LiDAR scanner, which uses infrared light. And then I used Houdini actually to navigate through them and export high resolution camera renders of the data sets that then I could use, print out as negatives and use to make the cyanotypes in the sunlight. And what I like about the project is that the dark sections underneath are still chemically active, so they're changing over time based on the light and the precipitation and the environment that the prints are shown in. And then maybe for the final project, I'm going to go over here across the rainbow. This is a project that I just finished and presented at Ars Electronica. It was produced during the STEAM imaging residency at Fraunhofer Mewis, and I was really interested to find what is not measurable in medical imaging. And I ended up doing full body MRI scans, which took 2 days over the course, like 8 hours over the course of 2 days, which was really intense. But I got them to do DTI scans of organs that are usually not imaged by science. And DTI scans are usually only used for mapping the nerves in the brain, but I really wanted to challenge them and see if we could map the nerves around my heart, my feet, and my vagina and ovaries. And so for this series, I used a series of medical software tools, which then gave me enough data that I could manipulate in Houdini to simulate the flow of hydrogen atoms, which are actually incredibly foundational for MRI to work because they measure the directional flow of hydrogen atoms in order to map where the nerves are. But they're also the most unpredictable on a nano and quantum scale. So I wanted to bring these atoms back into the animations, which were presented as Ars Electronica on 4 large 4K screens that you can see over here. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you perfectly.
Guys, can you? Deborah just said she can't hear me. Okay. So anyway, the animations were shown as these 3 large scale on 3 large scale 4K screens, and then there was also an augmented reality experience, which anybody could check out over here on this link at the top corner. I'm gonna just move it like a little bit so you see. So where I basically used again Houdini to reduce the data sets of the nerves and place them in augmented reality. And so for my class at Houdini School, which starts in November, I'll be teaching this pipeline of extracting 3D information from MRI data, manipulating it, simulating it in Houdini, and then exporting it to an augmented reality experience. So I hope that maybe some of you will join me then.
Sounds so exciting.
Yeah. And then finally, I want to jump over here to Current Cam, which is the project that provides and I started along with Artyom and Yanzi in 2019. And it started as a speculative film on the future of broadcasting cinema. It lies at the convergence of AI optimization, personalized attention economies, volumetric cinema, and one more thing, which I totally forgot. But this year, we have been conducting, would you want to remind me, Provides?
I lost track.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's been a long time. But this year, we've been conducting various workshops in volumetric storytelling. So the most recent one we did was for GoGBot, which you can kind of see over here. Where we taught students how to reconstruct environments, generate their own fake digital humans and rig them through artificial intelligence algorithms, and then build volumetric narratives in a kind of 3D collaborative space called Play Canvas, which is a bit like Mozilla Hubs, but it allows people more control over the assets that they bring in so they can work together. And this video that you're looking at here is our fake digital humans that are dancing to AI-generated hip-hop and rigged with one single camera view, actually, using an algorithm. And Pro, do you want to say anything more about that?
I'm good. I think you have completed every detail.
Awesome. Okay. Cool.
I think we would be having interesting conversation over digital humans, meta-humans, and how like to digitally represent ourselves in the phygital space during the roundtable. So thank you so much. That was very, very beautiful work. Every time I see it, it's like very breathtaking.
Thanks, Pro.
Yes, super inspiring. All the things that we were looking here. Thank you very much for everything. Well, so
cool.
Let's move now, I think, to the meet room.
Yeah.
Let's follow
At
the
end
end
of the rainbow.
Oh, cool! I love the ceiling.
Yeah, Alberto made this. Like we hammered this together last night. He's an amazing architect. Hi, are you from Cat Futures? Hello? Okay. Hi, Cami, are you from Cat Futures? Okay.
Hello.
Hi. I can't find the I can't find the guys from Cat Futures.
Yes, I can't. Yes. Oh, I think we're I'm not sure if you can contact them, yeah, because they send everything and you send the message as well. Yeah.
Cool. You chit chat. I'll email them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, do you have any idea? Hmm?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, yes. Are you from Cat Futures?
Yeah, I'm Evan. Hello, how are
Ah,
you?
okay. Because you didn't change your name, so we didn't. Yes, we heard you
Yes,
now. You were muted
we're
before.
waiting for you.
Okay.
I
So,
use
Awesome.
my
Cool.
avatar since
no,
everybody's using an avatar. Why
yes,
should
he's
I have
Evan.
a
Yes.
real
Yeah.
name?
Don't worry about it.
Perfect.
You were muted.
Yeah.
You are a muted panda now. So
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, okay, cool.
awesome. So
So,
Alberto is gonna introduce you. So
yes, exactly. Yes. Well, now we are here in the Cat Futures room with Evangelos Pantasi. Evangelos is an architectural engineering, building scientist, computational designer, and educator. Yeah. He's the computational design lead of BI, a group of the West Coast, and his research expertise is in complex geometric modeling and generative design strategies in conjunction with highlighting energy modeling and performance-driven design workflows across scales. His work empowers non-specialized architects and designers to develop design alternatives which couple critical design parameters with energy demanding and supply, comfort and liability. He holds a PhD in civil engineering from the Viterbi School of Engineering at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, a Master of Advanced Studies in Computer-Aided Architectural Design from the Swiss Federal University of Technology in Zurich, and a Diploma in Architectural Engineering from the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki. Today, he has authored co-authored journal papers, peer-reviewed scientific articles, and book chapters. So, welcome. Everything is up to you now.
welcome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
Hello,
you.
and thanks for inviting us. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you
Uh,
perfectly.
we have so many enhancing 3D features to show, but I would like to share some of the experience that we had with organizing this conference. So if you could follow me, maybe I could take you through the slides.
Yes,
So CAD
this is the first
Futures,
slide. Yes.
oh, I teleported somehow.
What happened? Where did he go?
Teleported.
How? Oh my god, can you come back? Just press G. Press G. Man, oh my god.
Yes,
That was out of control. Wait, where did he go?
Provided it's gonna go for the rest of the
Wait, I
show.
can't see him anymore. Did anyone
don't see
see?
him.
Oh, he's. Oh my
he
god.
just jumped.
Hi. Cool. You
Was
made
a
it back.
virtual
Where
accident.
did he go?
So
A pure accident.
here I am.
Okay, good.
Yes, here.
Oh.
it
So the conference
was really
is
interesting.
organized. What I would like to give is more of a perspective on all these tools. Like the conference organized since 1985, every 2 years. So in a way, a lot of the concepts and even the space that we're currently in was conceptualized or disseminated in previous conferences as such. So the aim of the conference was always to focus on elevating scientific research and scholarship, appealing for PhD students and early career researchers. Keeping the conference scale was always intimate, let's say, trying to keep it small, and always trying to develop theory along technical and seminar-based workshops. This year's conference, the topics were design imperatives. So if you would follow to the next one. So we try to focus in more bigger picture questions, such as can the reconsideration of computational design thinking formulate a plan of action to address planetary crisis? Uh, what is the heritage of design computing and what futures can we imagine? How does design maintain its disciplinary unity against the situatedness of its knowledge and its modality of its practices? What is the future of design computing practice within the architectural profession? So, and let's say this is who we were. These questions kind of stand as a broader agenda, and we were feeling that a lot of these topics are not really addressed in computational design conferences. I have been around in this field maybe for the last decade, and it was always more technology focused and tool focused. And I think we have reached a level where a lot of things are now possible and easy. And we should, I think, start addressing certain things more seriously. Uh, for example, to me, it's very interesting the presentation we've seen before, like the Houdini School. But let's say an interesting question that we would like to start thinking is what happens if, for some reason, the Houdini developers drop Houdini? Then you are left without a school, for example. And that has happened in many ways with tools that we have used. And the idea was how could we start taking ownership of things that we are developing. The people that organized the conference are shown here. I'm the person in the middle, Evangelos Padazis. I was a co-chair, and we did that with David Gerber, Biaina Bogosian, Alicia Nafmaden, Konstantinos Biltiadis, and Thanas Faranga. So we tried to keep it quite broad in terms of people and background. My background, although being academic, currently I'm working in the industry. So all this effort was kind of wasting, like not wasting time, but like not going towards my work. Uh, Now, some of the things that we would like to share was, for example, the structure. So if you would follow me to the next panel. So the structure, we envisioned it as a network which is shown here. So we have the call with the design imperatives. Everybody can redefine that as they want to. And then we had the paper session, the keynotes, the panel discussions, and the workshops. And all these are working in unison. And what we were trying to do with that, in the paper sessions, for example, we would see future and young researchers develop work and how they look at it. On the keynotes, we had some world experts, either from the industry or from the academia, where they present their work and overview. In the panel discussions, we were focusing on a multi faceted discussion from people that they are known or sort of uh, advanced in their work, but they're relatively young. And then in the workshop, we had some hands-on work. For example, Provides and Alberto that they are invited us were people that participated and did the work with younger people, for example, which was very interesting to see. So we don't see something as more important as the other in this case. And we think that all of this should work in unison in order to provide people with a perspective uh, on the field. What did we attempt? And that's our, for example, here the next slide. We tried to provide an opportunity to reflect on ongoing and novel research with a perspective on both past and the future. So, for example, we held a talk about the past, present, futures, where researchers presented alternative computational models that haven't surfaced, for example, and they haven't manifested. For example, they're not even taught in schools currently. And that was from Theodora Barduli, Daniel Cardoso Lach, and Rodrigo Chigame, who are working on that. And they are working exactly on how certain things were left out of, let's say, the development of the history, but now there is a lot of merit in looking back at it, because maybe the computation we know or the tools we know is just one side of a computational future. The other thing that we try to do, and I tried to mention it earlier, was look critically at computation and notions that were presented as concepts in previous events and which became prevalent in the pandemic. For example, what does it mean, the virtual space? How do we navigate in a virtual space as such as the one we are currently in? Do we need a virtual space, for example, for everything, etc.? And then how does that reflect on the profession? And the last thing, which I'm very happy that you're also trying to do, is like how can you foster community at a time when social distancing measures is leading to isolation? And we, in a way, believe we were successful in some of that, not all of that. In the next one, you can see sort of these cards where these were some of the topics. Again, I flew away. I don't know why, so I'm coming back. So these are like, that sort of shows the range of the topics that we had. So we were trying to reflect on the emerging technological theories and practices. So we had the past and present futures. We had the computational and the state of the practice, which, for example, I was coordinating, and that was a reflection on what does it mean to work as a computational designer within a firm, a small firm or a big firm. And this is something that, of course, has tremendously changed the last 10 years. We had a talk about digital literacy and what does it mean to, again, I flew. I don't know, I shouldn't be pressing right click. So can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, yes,
So
we can hear
digital
you.
literacy, and for example, digital literacy, an interesting question was, how can we talk about digital architecture when if we forget about the computer? So what does it mean computational thinking when you're not thinking of the tool, but rather on the problem that you're trying to solve, which is a lot of times left on the side, as a lot of people, me included, a lot of designers, evolve and start to think with the tool, but they never really consider architectural questions outside of that. Deep learning in the built environment, so human well-being. So how can we use AI and deep learning techniques in order to quantify, for example, well-being or beauty? And can we do that? And then we had like data and policy, which is a very interesting topic. How do we use data and what are the policies around data? Designing materials interaction was more dealing with physical computation and physical computing and ubiquitous computing. And lastly, virtual worlds and physical worlds, and what is the overlap? How can we use, for example, gaming platforms or references from actual worlds in order to build physical worlds? Uh, so this, I think, gives an idea of the topics. And for us, let's say these were some topics that are not, as I said earlier, not always mentioned. Like we get a lot fascinated about what we can do with tools, and that's always good, especially if you are young. But then as we grow older, and maybe that's a lot of people here have been around for a while, it's nice to raise topics such as these ones too. Um, so some of the people that we had as keynotes, if we go to the next panel, was people from the industry, such as Cristiano
What
Secato.
is happening? Oh,
So we had people from the industry like Cristiano Secato from Zaha Hadid Architects, Martha Tsigari from Norman Foster's, who kind of showed things that are happening in the industry or have been happening. But we had also people like Chris Lupkeman, who is working as the foresight of ETH Zurich, and he was pointing to the future and like imperatives that we have, such as sustainability, and how these can be addressed at the scale of a building or at the scale of a city. Uh, and we had people like Marcos Novak, and I don't know if you have heard about Marcos Novak, but Marcos Novak was one of the visionaries about virtual worlds and trans architecture and liquid architecture. And it was a very nice addition to the program because this person has written about these things in the 90s. And we're now in 2021, and like conceptually, not a lot of things have changed since then. Yeah. It's just that the resolution has changed. And then again, we had like, I would like to end it with people like David Benjamin, who are trying to look at computation from a more critical eye and material computation. So trying to bridge uh, high-end digital, let's say, with very low-level physical things. And I think this is a very nice perspective on this Phygital term that we are having on this panel discussion. And people like Dion Moult, that maybe a lot of people do not know, but he has contributed a lot in the open BIM. And I would like to end with him because that's how we started. And for example, initiatives like that are not really pushed as much, I believe. For example, developing open standards that everybody could use and not standards that they are developed by proprietary software, such as the Autodesk, for example, family. And here you see, for example, they're providing hands-on experimentations, and that would be all the workshops that we had. And we have like the topics, and the topics we try to curate it so we have a good range from physical and like remote controlling of physical robots, which I thought is very interesting for the time we're being, but also computational design, different computational design approaches that had to do either with AI, the use of augmented reality, bio-inspired solar design, for example, how this can inform generative design, etc. So I would like to end it with, let's say, how did we do it? Of course, we did it digitally, and here you can see some of the screenshots. And what did we learn from it? And that, I think, my last point is computational criticality is needed more than ever to address immediate and imminent design imperatives. Design computing discourse and pedagogy should not be solely based on technological advances and tools. And interdisciplinary research takes time because communication between people from different disciplines is hard. And it's very essential for dealing with complex design environmental approaches, in our opinion. And of course, as I said earlier, more effort is needed for developing open and new standards that can be used across all disciplines in the AC. Now, let's say, what did we learn from taking this, doing it virtually and not physically, because it was the first time that happened virtually? It is certainly faster to organize a virtual conference, and of course it needs less money or less funds. It produces less carbon footprint, and it expands the availability and access to people. And of course, conversations can be translated automatically, and then they can be stored on online repositories. However, the format becomes very predictive. It requires less dedicated focus, and engagement becomes harder. Chat and Q&A options are not as flexible or forgiving. So you can always moderate it, and it always becomes weird, let's say. And for many social conference platforms, participation in shared tasks is key to sustain interest. And this is what I would like. I kind of like the initiative that you took to bring your conference or this talk on the Mozilla Hubs in a virtual space. I believe we can discuss on that, what are the pros and the cons of that on the round table. Thank you very much for having us, and apologies from the rest of the organizers that they couldn't be here.
No, thank you so much. That was, I love the conclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for sharing with us the experience and summed it up so well. A lot.
So
yeah.
it was really inspiring. And if you have any questions, okay, or maybe we must go to the next room. Is it ready?
Yes,
the other
we can save the question for the roundtable later.
Exactly. Yes, much better.
Cool. Thank you.
So follow me. Thank you very much, and follow me to the next room. Through this portal. Here, this one.
Hi.
So here we
Hi.
are. I
Yep.
think we must use the fly mode again.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Please press the button G and let's fly to
Cat features.
the Voronoi
If you press
map.
G, you can
Yes.
fly up there.
Here we are. Here.
Evangelos? You have to press G on the keyboard.
Yes.
Do you hear me? I think you're muted. Ugh.
Esto está complicado.
Evangelos?
Apretá el botón G.
You have to press G on the keyboard.
Una vez. El botón G una vez y tú tienes
Okay.
que moverte hacia arriba.
I will type in the chat.
Si lo hiciste en el otro mapa, no lo hiciste. No se te mueve, está como pegado. Ahí para apretar el botón G. Para hacia arriba y vuelas. Con el botón G prendido, apretar, o sea, con el botón G activado te tiene que aparecer el fly mode a la izquierda, abajo. David está pegado también abajo. Le voy a decirle. David,
Hi.
botón G.
Yeah, I was there and then I fall.
Hi.
I'm going to there.
You have to press G. G on the keyboard. Hi. Yes, press G on the keyboard and fly.
What?
Press G on the keyboard.
Yes, I pressed, but I don't know what happened. And now?
And you have to fly. You have to go forward, like look up and fly.
Pretty good. It's a nice breakout conversation.
Here we are.
Alberto, you have to have Davi.
Is it possible to move a guy with the cursor?
David, your avatar cannot.
Because he's having problems with his keyboard.
Like I have long hair.
Ah.
The G button is not working. That's the next problem.
I think he can type /fly in the chat. /fly.
Ah,
Yeah.
So how is fly
/fly. Yeah.
fly?
Yeah.
This way.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I wonder how many.
Yes.
Yeah, I will teach him. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I'm going down.
Yeah, go.
Go.
The new Oculus, I think, will have some sort of like eye tracking built in or something. So, but
And facial rigs.
facial, yeah, I've seen this facial tracking on the index, but you have to.
That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, that's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, there are no ramp. Ramp and stairs are quite special in Mozilla Hubs.
Eye contact.
Thank you so much.
We'll need eye contact too, so some kind of triangulation between the webcam and the eye tracking and everything.
Yeah, the eyes are huge.
Awesome.
Yes,
Really important.
huge. That's one of the huge problems with Zoom is the eye contact.
Right.
Oh, you're making it, Davi. Look up.
Weird.
Look up.
Yeah.
Matt, is there a way to
Yeah.
just grab a
Yeah,
person and have him here?
Oh,
Because, like, look at him. That's not
We
possible.
should maintain the fly mode on.
Yeah, like I could
Okay.
manually select the player, bring him to this.
Let's clap for him.
Maybe if we cheer him on, he'll fly.
Virtual.
Look at me. Yes, 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 yes. Woohoo.
Look at him go. So majestic.
You did it. You did it. Cool. Okay. Because that was the guest, so now we can start.
Yes.
Yay!
Cool.
Yes, we are here.
Yay.
Nice job.
Finally, we have columns, but we don't have a ramp. But sorry for that. For the next time, we must build a virtual ramp.
No, it's good, good. No, no problem.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
where's
Alberto,
David?
do you want to introduce them?
Yes, definitely. Now,
He's
I was
still
ready.
trapped out
Well,
there.
Sigradi. But where's David now?
He's still
David,
down there.
We-
He's still trying. Just start. I think he'll be fine.
yes, well, I will start, and then David can.
He can take his time.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's got it.
Yes. Okay. Well, our next guest is Sigradi, with David Sperling and David Torreblanca. David Sperling is professor of the Institute of Architecture and Urbanism of the University of Sao Paulo. Architect with a master's degree and PhD in architecture and urbanism from USP. Some of his projects were exhibited at the 4th and 10th and 11th International Architecture Biennale of Sao Paulo and at the Storefront of Art and Architecture in New York. He was the curator of exhibition Homo Faber Digital Fabrication in Latin America in 2015 and Homo Faber 2.0 Politics of Digital in Latin America in 2018. He was the chair of the Sigradi 2018 Technopolitics Conference and is currently the president of Sigradi 2020 to 2021 period. On the other hand, David Torreblanca is a Chilean product designer based in Medellin, Colombia. He holds a master's degree in product design technologies with a distinction cum laude. His research interests focus on the intersection of biology, design, digital fabrication, and parametric design. Co-author of the books by Biometrica and Design. Since 2002, he has been a professor in his career at different educational institutions. He has participated in competitions, exhibition workshops, and international conferences. David Blanca was the chair of the Sigradi 2020 Transformative Design online conference, and he is member of the International Executive Committee of Sigradi. He is currently associate professor and researcher in an industrial design career at University of Pontificia Bolivariana, Medellin, Colombia. So, welcome both of you, and thank you very much to be here with us. And you can start if you want. You know who is going to be the first one. And,
Okay,
I'm sorry
Alberto.
for the ramp.
Okay, no, no problem. And thank you for inviting and to introducing us and for this beautiful pavilion that we have here for Sigradi. And I and David Torreblanca, we will share this presentation until now. And the Sociedad Ibero-Americana de Gráfica Digital, or Ibero-American Society of Digital Graphics, caters researchers and educators and professionals in architecture, urban design, communication design, product design, and art, whose work involves computational and digital media. It is a sister organization to Acadia, ECAD, Caidra, and ASCAD. And in 2021, Sigradi is celebrating its 25th anniversary. David?
Thanks. Welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is David Parolanca. I was chair of Sigradi 2020. Today I'm going to talk about that great experience. First, Sigradi 2020 topic was focused on transformative design, about the role of design to drive material, social, cultural, and environmental transformation through technology. The important thing is how design and architecture involve and make different transformations. First, Beijing has stood out of its deep social, cultural, and different transformation in which design architecture it was very important. Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, founded in 1956, is one of the 100 best universities in Latin America. It's really important in Colombia too. Excuse me. Okay.
Here, the next one. Let's move to the
Our
yeah.
first proposal was a face-to-face conference, including thematic sections, keynote speakers, workshops, exhibitions, especially with a great experience in the city, Medellin city, to know architecture, different activities in the city. It was the first idea before pandemic situation. In March 2020, the world began to experience the COVID-19 pandemic and a present situation that suddenly changed all your life. Moving. Okay. We're moving.
Let's go to this one.
I'm looking.
Here you are. Yeah, perfect.
Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Now, the experiment is talking about the new context in that pandemic situation.
Okay, thanks, David. This new context that we faced in 2020 highlights the transformative design theme because new scenarios and possibilities emerge where design disciplines play a significant role in promoting transformations to preserve human life, especially during crisis. The conference had to adapt then and then transform and evolve considering the circumstances. Then we need to experience resilience, adaptation, transformation, and evolution.
Can you see David? Or is it lost?
And then we had these possible scenarios that was face-to-face conference that was not possible more, hybrid conference and an online conference. Then the first SIGRADIS online conference emerged in the middle of 2020. David?
Okay. About the agenda, we have a lot of activities, 5 days full of intensive activities, including workshops, different conferences, and different panel discussions. It was really very interesting in digital media. We use very important things, the platforms. We use streaming, WebEx, and YouTube, connecting people from different countries and different languages. Forum.
Well,
we have 4 interesting keynote speakers: Augmented Architectures, Use, Alberto, and Tomohiro Fukuda.
Yeah, the
We
workshop.
have interesting workshops around different topics such as biosphere design, parametric design, architecture, football design, and others. The important thing was for us that we had 155 papers from 16 countries and 3 continents. It was really impressive. We had a interesting panel discussion about transformative design in crisis context. Other interesting activity was a tribute to Chuck Eastman. Follow me. Excuse me for my slow. This is the digital exhibition about transformative design with different Colombia research projects, especially highlights different solutions through technology and design for social problems.
Yes, and there was the
They
publication.
now spreading. No, excuse me, it's my part.
No, but this
then
is stuff in the connection.
now, okay, we have three publications: Crossing Books, publication in Coming Cat, and Blogger platform. And what is the question? What were the challenges, disadvantages? There were a lot of challenges. First, there was not face-to-face contact with friends and colleagues. In face-to-face conference, social activities are very important. There was not social activity face-to-face. There was not real experience in the city, the first proposal, the first idea making. People were tired and stressed from digital interaction. In pandemic, all people have a lot of activities all day in digital media. The situation is stressed. People continued in their jobs simultaneously. It is not common. All people is working and simultaneously speaking in the conference, for example. Uh, Adaptations to different time zones. That's a very important thing. So, what were the advantages and the possibilities? First, the low cost. Keynote can participate easily from the country. Keynote speaker can participate from the house, comfortable, obviously. Simultaneous activities, digital networking, digital collaboration, connect people easily from different countries and continents. Record and save activities. That point is very important. Follow me, please. Finally, SIGADI 2020 online conference highlights digital media for design and architecture. That's very important topic.
And
That's very
in 2021 SIGRADI conference, we will experience the ubiquitous event.
Now,
When we face a hybrid events in physical spaces and in different countries and digital part of the conference. Then interactions between physical and digital spaces simultaneously can open a new stage for SIGRADI's conference. And nowadays we have some as
2021 version.
As organization team, we have some questions. First of all, is it possible to go from face-to-face model to the digital one, evolving to another stage? The other is it possible to reinvent conference from a digital point of view? How it is possible? And the final one, what if we design new hybrid or mixed scenarios of interaction for conferences, like Provides and Alberto are doing and we are experiencing now? Thanks, and we invite you to be with us in SIGRADI 2021.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions, comments?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Even though there were some technical navigation difficulties, I think we made it. Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Alberto, are you muted?
I'm muted now? Yeah?
Yes, cool.
So, well, thank you very much for your presentation. And well, I think we lost David spelling. I think it's having issues with his connection.
No,
But
he's
well,
here. I think you didn't hear him, but he is right on top of you.
oh, well, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
He was
these
speaking. He
questions
was
are
speaking. Yeah.
yeah, these questions are really good for, I think, for the roundtable later. Yes, it is possible to reinvent conferences and then these hybrid modes of connectivity. And well, thank you very much for all your presentations. And I think let's move to the next one, design morphing, the last one.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
at the
so
end of
much.
this pavilion, follow us to the end. Okay. Yeah.
We will move to the last room with our last guest presentation. So
Yes.
if you guys would follow us, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Cool. So, hi, let me introduce Michael Pryor from Design Morphin.
Yeah, we still we must take a last text, I think, or let's move on. Mm. This looks really nice.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. Michael is a multifaceted designer utilizing Rhino and Grasshopper, C Sharp, Maya, and ZBrush, Houdini, and many other software. He's a computational designer at the Nike, NXT, and the CDO of Design Morphin. He was involved in major architectural works in the US, China, Dubai, and Lebanon. Michael worked at Trahan, Soma, Oli, and Aya on projects ranging from museums, housing, restaurants, furniture, products, and prototypes. Michael is also the author of the Grasshopper 3D plugin, Pufferfish, with over 100K downloads. He has tutored workshops and webinars at the AA Visiting School, Paris with Louis Vuitton, 3D Dreaming, Reese Arc, Mitchell's SL, Harvard GSD, RATLab, PA Mill, and Design Morphin. So thank you for joining us today, Michael. The stage is yours.
Thank you. I first want to thank you and your team for putting the room together for me. Looks quite nice.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. So I'm a computational designer, currently working at Nike and Design Morphine. And I left. I didn't put any of kind of the architecture stuff because I just wanted to focus more on like the computational kind of side of things. So, kind of have a bit of an interesting career trajectory. Started in kind of just regular architecture school, and kind of like through this whole system of events through teaching and whatnot, ended up as a computational designer in essentially product design, right, at Nike. Through my entire kind of career path, I was always, and that's what you see on these kind of like next few boards, is just always playing with like different kinds of form and expression. Doesn't always mean anything super significant, but really just trying to learn all these kind of softwares and primarily algorithmic based types of design. I don't want to spend too much time talking about each and everything, but there's kind of like I think like the next like 4 or so boards is just a small sample of purely geometric studies. And actually this board where I am in the like top right is kind of the geometry that we're inside right now, this kind of pink which that one specifically was made with Houdini. Yeah, I keep like walking into people. So yeah, just a lot of studies of that. So if we go over to this board here, it's kind of like where the kind of whole education thing started. I used to kind of teach and also organize these workshops all around the world. Post COVID, we were mostly doing in-person intense workshops. Usually about a week or longer, kind of like 24/7, like learning and designing. And also at the same time, up top here is my old blog that I haven't touched in years, but kind of where I started was also just providing like information for like cool techniques in Grasshopper. So these are those kind of top ones here, with Grasshopper. So if I go over here, so at some point about 3 years ago, I started developing a tool, a plugin for Grasshopper Rhino called Pufferfish. And the idea was this was like just another kind, it's basically another kind of education where, there's a type of education where you can, be in a classroom and teach. But the other kind is like providing information and tools for people to use to simplify things. And so like being a Grasshopper user, at this point of making this for, 8 years or so, just kind of understanding the kind of annoyances and things that I hated repeating or maybe difficult to achieve, and trying to kind of collect all that into making simpler to use workflows. And that's kind of an idea, like with all these software in general, right? Like each kind of type of software, as software goes on and on, the tools become easier and easier. You can see this really evident in Houdini. Every time there's an update, there's more and more like kind of like automated systems in the shelf, right? Like, so you don't anymore have to necessarily know how to piece by piece make a pyro simulation, right? Like they kind of like have kind of formatted these things, and that's kind of the same idea, and it caught on, and yeah, a lot of people are using it. There's a lot of tools there, and it's just a lot of fun for me to even just see like what it allows other people to create. So like kind of that education of enabling people to do these kind of things. So here on this board, this is just like the samples. There's a lot of like examples that come with it and whatnot. So, and then so these next 3 boards here are some of my favorite boards, because these are boards that like what other people are doing using Pufferfish, and I'm getting tagged in like Instagram all the time, like this kind of stuff, and I just try to collect them when I do. It's really cool because a lot of people use it for things I wouldn't necessarily have expected it to be used for, or wasn't even necessarily intended for. And this will lead on to later about our kind of master's degree. And the idea that like there's just so many use cases for these things. You can see here people are experimenting with jewelry, with furniture, with footwear, with abstract stuff. One guy on the top left of this, he used it to make his tattoo. Right? That's a real tattoo that which I always find really cool, because my software is kind of like tattooed on someone's body, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, all kinds of things that you can see here, abstract stuff. A friend of mine was using it down in this lower left corner to make some, character heads for these robot characters. Wall textures. And then this last panel here, which is really cool too, is that it's kind of like to me, it's kind of like this kind of pay it forward in education is, once about 6 months after the software came out, people, the plugins, people started getting used to it. I started to see all of these tutorials pop up online that weren't made by me. So like now other people are like showing like what they do with it or have done with it. So I found that's really really interesting that it kind of takes its own educational life after that as well. Overexposed. I think it looks fine. So anyway, back to my kind of career over here, which is where I'm at with Nike, and obviously due to like NDAs and stuff like that, I can't really talk about the specifics, but these are some footwears that are out in the market that I've worked on. There's a lot more that aren't out yet. Primarily basketball, Kyrie's, Giannis's, LeBron's. Actually, I don't have LeBron on here because it's not for sale yet, but it was like the ones in the Space Jam movie. So, transitioning from kind of architecture to like this product design and using these computational tools really started, to get me thinking, that a lot of the education in computational design, specifically also in schools and degrees, is always attached, seems to be, for the most part, primarily attached to architecture. And I kind of wanted to start to think about, like, what is computational design as a profession on its own, not like a computational architect or computational design in an architecture office. So it really started to get me like that this is kind of like super like possible, because I was one day in an architecture office, and it was the next day at Nike, and honestly, it wasn't such a difficult transition with the kind of tools and things we're doing. So that brings me to kind of design morphing, which is we're teaching all the time. I think we're on our 7th year, and again, we used to, for the most part, do in-person workshops. Now we're doing a lot of webinars. We were doing it about a year or so before COVID, and then during COVID, we really ramped up the kind of webinar production. We're a bit different in our education, in that we're always trying to stay current. So we're not like a subscription service. Basically, we teach these live webinars, and they exist for like 2 months after that, and then they're gone, and then we're on to the next one. So you can't kind of like buy them afterwards, and then we're on to like the next version, the next thing. So that's kind of like our model is just like current, always like kind of in the now type of thing. And we have a lot of team, and it's just a really, really good time, really nice team, and a lot of different softwares there. And in terms of the educational part, we're teaching these things on through things like Zoom. Our master's is taking part a lot on Teams and Miro. And I think at this point, those tools, like especially Miro, are really effective at this kind of collaborative work. And in the sense that ideally, an environment like we're in right now is a kind of really great kind of like the goal or the hope is that we can design in this kind of like real virtual thing. It's just that in my experience, like trying to teach a long-term like serious kind of education is still, I think, difficult in what's available in VR environments. Not only just because of the what I find kind of the distraction element, which is like there's just like you just want to play around and like throw rubber ducks and stuff like that. But it's really hard to there's a disconnect between people needing VR headsets or good internet connections, and when you're teaching people from around the world, you're dealing with a lot of people that are not in countries that have access to these things. So I think it's just like not at the point yet where it's like an effective long-term situation for education, and that's why we're still like using things like Miro and Zoom, things that require very little to use. But the dream is this kind of like accessible VR effective kind of So here's just like a very, very small, I mean, we've done so many workshops. Here's just a very small sample. You know, some outcomes. They're so various because there's always just such different topics. You know, conceptual stuff, fabricated stuff, jewelry stuff, visualization. You know, so there's just like a lot of different things that our team goes through here, and then also, you know, fabricating stuff. Not so much right now with webinars. I mean, obviously you can teach fabrication stuff, but I really like the fabrication kind of education to be in person because, you know, obviously people don't have you know, 5-axis robotic arms in their living rooms. So you really, I mean, you could teach it and someone can watch like how you're using a robot online or whatever, but it's just like you don't really, as a student, I feel you don't get that experience of actually using that equipment for the most part. So that's why we don't really focus on the webinars so much on those things. And so this is, you know, talking about product design and getting more into product design. This was, you know, one of our first, and we're working on more, but one of our first kind of product designs, you know, as kind of a collectivist design working. And we did this in collaboration with Arturo Tedeschi, if you know him, Italian designer. And what was cool about this is we used traditional methods and computational methods. So the interior is computationally designed. I mean, there was many iterations. You can see one of the iterations in the bottom left. Kind of light diffuser, 3D printed, and the iterations were based on like how is light diffusing and like kind of like what kind of light we wanted is what's creating these kind of porous cavities. But then the exterior is a handmade Murano glass in Italy. So it was really interesting to see how to meet those things. You know, we had to design this and then give them an idea of the glass, and then they make the glass, and then we had to scan the glass and then edit our print and all this kind of back and forth process that was really interesting. And that brings us to like kind of the end. Just have posters here because we're just only 3 weeks into this. But we've been working for 3 years and happened, we got to partner with the UACGB, which is a architecture and engineering school in Bulgaria, and got our program accredited. So it's a fully accredited master's degree, specifically in computational design. The year 21-22 degree has just started, like I said, like 3 weeks ago, and we have about 45, 50 students, which is really cool, really nice success. And then we just launched our second one, which is already getting applicants. So we're really excited about that. And the framework, it's not like a typical master's degree. The framework is, there's kind of one idea and project that carries through the entire duration of the degree, hitting these different gates, these different chapters. And the idea was, again, like this was just coming from like, going from an architect, working at Nike, seeing the trend of a lot of computational designers working in products. And so the idea is like, can we make a computational design education program where you start from the scale of like humans, so you're looking at things that have to do with the body, fashion, products, and you work your way all the way through a gradient of scales up to like the scale of cities and development. And then along the way, you're hitting things like transportation, vehicles. So really to use these kind of chapters as a vehicle to explore computational design at different scales and how it really is translatable across those things. And yeah, I mean, hopefully next presentations in like a year or so, we'll actually have work to show for these things. And that's it.
Thank you so much. Brilliant work. And I think we for sure will have a lot to debate on education and the future of its format. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And amazing models.
Thank you. Thank you for putting them in the space.
So, sorry for putting too much light. Anyway, so we are overrunning a little bit, like my eyes is going blind. Anyway, but let's proceed back to the main room, and then we spend as much time as we can for the roundtable. Oh, thank you, Dovey. Yeah, see you soon. Thank you so much for your effort. Thank you. Yep, the room is this way if you would just follow me. Thank you. Cool, and we're back. We made it
so
safely
much.
in one piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Of course, I can promote you guys if you want to bring stuff into the roundtable. Just let me know.
Okay, here we are again.
Yes, back in one piece. Did we lose anyone?
I think we have a few guys that we don't have few guys here. I think we missed a few of them in the process. But anyway, we are the survivors.
Yeah, exactly. We have survived for the roundtable. So,
yeah.
Without further delay, let us just start. I mean, I guess the first question that I would ask everyone is that Phygital, as Professor Roberto have mentioned, is quite a loosely defined idea. It actually came from the commercial world as opposed to being from theoretical debate. So how would any of you define what Phygital actually is besides it's connecting the physical and the digital? Like, what is the deeper meaning for you to have a Phygital exchange and, yeah.
Here.
No one wished to jumpstart?
Yes.
I wonder if it shouldn't be more of an analogy. We shouldn't be thinking. Maybe we should think about it more as just an analogy of physical in the virtual space instead of a bridge.
I think what's interesting is, where it's all going. The near future and the far future, I think, are two different conversations, and how, technology, a lot of these technologies have been around for so long, it feels like it's very slow. And I think the ultimate goal as humans is to get technology to the point where it's invisible and where we really are teleported. And here is just like the beginning of teleportation in hubs, which is really interesting. But I find that fascinating, kind of like, how do we get closer and closer to having tech be invisible with us communicating and learning in a space?
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that, and I think, like I was kind of saying before, is that the biggest challenge is to me is just accessibility. That's kind of like the thing we always deal with when we try to do these kind of more kind of novel setups where it's anything different than just like Zoom or something. Especially when you have people. I mean, there's so many people even just having trouble connecting to Zoom, which is like such a light software. So it's like, there's like the technology side, and then there's also the kind of global accessible side. Like for us, that's definitely like always the biggest challenge. It's like, not everyone can afford a great computer. Not everyone has even, we have students that like the where they live, like the power goes out every hour.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah,
it can get a bit challenging.
that was my experience recently as well at the school I teach at.
Yeah, I think some people kind of forget. I mean, in the phygital, for example, in this experience, there is no physical. And to Michael's point, for example, a lot of people tend to forget the physical. So physical, for example, is connectivity, or if there is the optical fiber connecting to your house, or not, or if you have a computer. Like all the people that we are now maybe on this call, we have forgotten about all these problems because maybe it's 10 years back that we had these problems. But there are people that that's their reality. So I think, physical and then having a lot of architects on the room, that's always the challenge. You can design anything you want in your screen, but how that comes into reality, that's a whole different story. And I think that's the tectonic component to it. That in computational design, like for many years, people were getting away with it. So you could develop anything, any definition you want, but then this is not really materialized in any coherent way. And this is good for some time, but then after some time, we need to be a bit more considerate about such things. So technology tends to become more invisible, like our mobile devices, is a good example of that. But that is not really the case for everyone, of course, and that is happening at different paces. And I think this is something very important to note. Like where is the physical in the digital, for example, and how does the physical, is the physical in the digital, does a point cloud of something that you scanned, is that physical? Because for me that's not physical, it's a representation of physical, but it's not physical. So I would like to hear what other people have to say about that. But
I think it's super interesting that you're mentioning the optical fiber. Actually, the inventor of that is from Hong Kong, and then he made the technology free for everyone because I think he believed that everyone deserved the same internet speed. But of course, there are other social economic influences that make that not happen. And I think for accessibility, the mobility of devices, like hooking onto 5G or 4G, actually render the fact that you need a house, you need a property for you to be able to connect to a fiber obsolete. So I think that's also something to put on the table as well. Mobility X, accessibility.
In that sense, just an example. And here in London, I'm living in a house which is at
Super
the
bad
beginning of the
Wi-Fi.
pandemic, with super bad Wi-Fi because we don't have fiber. So in a way, it's better to use the connection with the 4G or 5G instead of the landline, because the landline is completely useless. So what's going on again? Now at the last few weeks, they were starting to install optic fiber in the neighborhood, and I said, okay, this is just because of the pandemic, because before the pandemic wasn't necessary, but now it's completely essential. So what's happening in our cities, in our environment, is something like at the end the VR is pushing the physical to a different level. Like something like so typical that okay, how we are using the internet in our houses, because we are working from our houses now. So it's really, really, really important, all these things. So this is just an example. Another example, I'm not sure.
I think in this moment, people are bored about this connection, digital online conference, online activities, because in pandemic there were a lot of digital activities. But I think in the future, people will be interested in this technology. And for me, the future is a combination. It's hybrid of digital combination between face-to-face activities and digital activities. It's important to the emotional connection because in a screen, in digital activities, it's not the same to face when you see people, the expression, people smiling or sad. For example, in this moment, all of you are very serious, Alberto, or very serious. But in the future is for me mix or hybrid combination between physical and digital in education and working, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
Yes, well, indeed,
Oh,
you pick something. Well, you nailed it in that sense, because we are still not transferring in the proper way our emotions in this virtual environment.
Yeah.
Now, well, for instance, when with this all these avatars, we are trying to communicate our feelings, but this is still in progress. Because as you said. Now I'm looking in my case quite serious. I mean, I'm not a quite serious guy. I'm smiling always. So it's a kind of challenge, I think. But this is something it's in progress, as you said as well, because at the beginning we started with this kind of plethora of virtuality in the pandemic time. But now we are trying to reach a kind of balance between digital and physical. So at the end, it could be a mix of both of the best of both sides, and well, we are still working on that. Just in case this VR environment that we develop with provides with the outside of the Bartlett in Gordon Street is maybe it's a proof that okay, what if we are transferring something from the real environment to the digital one? Because for us, for the guys who were studying, or we are, or the guys who we are working at the Bartlett now, in a way, we are with this scenario, this virtual scenario, this real 3D capture. We are transferring in a way a kind of emotion inside the VR environment, because for us this space means something. So this is at the end, I think it's something that we are still learning from all this process.
yeah, I agree. And I think Sigrady Davids, they also put to the table a very interesting question. Like, what if we can design new hybrid or mixed scenarios of interaction for maybe not just conferences, but also education and other scenarios?
Yes. Talking about emotions, I remember really well the Cadria, no, Acadia conference a year ago, and when they started with these virtual rooms, and at the end they developed a kind of virtual party there. In a way, it was super funny because for all of us that we are always participating in conferences, these parties or these opportunities in which we are at the end sharing with our colleagues coming from different parts of the world, we are missing that. So this platform in a virtual environment was really interesting at that time. But now I think we must rethink about what's going on with this virtual environment, because in a way we must connect it with the real environment as well. Without that connection, they are losing the meaning in a way. Or maybe I'm wrong. Yes, I'm putting something on the table for the discussion.
Just so I understand, are you talking about the difference between the real life connection and the digital connection and that divide, and because the emotion, there's so many emotions involved? Yeah, I mean that, I think they're I love the positive spin of like, let's take the best of both worlds. I think that's absolutely true. do think it's going to be a while before we feel that connection. I mean, sometimes I'm on Zoom all day and I don't feel the same as when I'm in a space with people all day. And why is that? You know, so I think there's some biological processes going on there that needs to be, you know, uncovered maybe.
Yeah,
But should it
goes
be
back
the
to that
same?
whole, like, what does
Oh,
this
sorry.
space mean? Sorry, yeah, it goes back to like, what
Yeah.
does this space mean? Like, I can see Alberto right in front of me. I have my
Mhm.
to my left.
Mhm.
Like, I have a sense of where everyone is and what does that mean, and what does it mean that we're missing these hallway conversations at these Zoom conferences and
Yeah.
these things that we value in real life conferences.
But I also think there's so many like subtle ways that we experience space that are not just you know, visual and geometric. You know, our bodies and our senses are so expansive, and there's so much we can draw from a real experience that doesn't translate in these digital spaces. Like I remember when we first did that big show that I told you about, we spent like maybe 4 hours in the opening, and we were all so hungry to go to an opening and see people. But honestly, after the 4 hours, it was just like all of our bodies were exhausted and our eye pupils were hurting, you know, because we were literally just sitting in a chair for 4 hours. And this is something I think a lot about. Like, you know, somebody said, like, you know, if the power of the lights goes out in the town, but what about the power of our bodies? Like, I think that, yeah, technology becomes more invisible, but at the expense of the physical. Like the attention economy becomes real when it takes a toll on our bodies, when our bodies don't get to experience space in the same way. And I often wonder, like, how are our bodies changing in these environments if we continue to occupy virtual spaces versus physical ones, you know?
Isn't that a matter of experience? So for a lot of younger people, maybe it's gonna be more natural to be in a VR space than a physical space, or they will feel more familiar. Like I'm not that person, but I'm wondering. I don't have. I mean, we did, for example, the conference, and if I wasn't the organizer, I don't know if I would sit 3 days, 12 hours on my chair for a conference. But I never went to a conference for that reason. For me, what was happening around the conference was always more important. But then I always think maybe, you know, I'm old school in a way. And what you're describing, yeah, I agree with you. And I believe there are many ways that our body would be situated in a space differently. But I can picture a lot of people that they feel more comfortable in a virtual space because they would feel awkward in a physical space. And so there's always a flip side to this. My question is, do you need to do that? Like, if you would ask me if I would if I would choose a virtual over a physical conference, I would never do the virtual. But I don't go to the conference just for, you know, seeing presentations because that you can do on YouTube. I go to a conference to visit the city and meet people and like do other things that are together with the conference that you cannot do from your seat, you know, or from your room. Or like you know the unpredictable thing that can happen when traveling. This will never happen in the virtual space. Maybe you will be teleported on somewhere you didn't want to, and that's bad interface, you know. But let's say, whereas when you go to a place physically, there could be happening things that you know they are unpredictable, and that's because it's more complex situation. Here we're still in a 2D surface. There are pixels that show 3D, but we're again in a 2D surface. So that's an interesting.
I agree. I would always choose the physical conference versus the digital conference, but you know, but here we are, you know, and the whole topic of invisibility in my mind is more far future where, you know, I mean, I don't know how relevant this is, but I mean, how can would it even be possible one day where we really couldn't tell the difference? I mean, but that's like probably another topic, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah, in following this thread, this is a question that emerged from all this roundtable too, which is related with in a way this crisis became a kind of opportunity for all of you, or as a kind of entrepreneurship, or as well, or from a learning or teaching or researching way of thinking. Because at the end, all these experiences were migrating from a local perspective to a global perspective. That is something quite relevant. Throughout you, for instance, from my perspective, from my corner, I can see that without the crisis, maybe most of these opportunities,
Yeah.
these opportunities now are global thanks to the crisis. It's super interesting that this crisis push our boundaries to a
Yeah.
better level. Hmm?
It's a super positive, definitely. And you know, we're talking about conferences and that, but in terms of the topic of education, I see a huge advantage to teaching digitally. You know, I see advantages on Zoom, but in this environment, I was thinking about this all day yesterday, how learning 3D content creation in 3D is really interesting to me.
Yes.
Yes, maybe
Just now.
this crisis, pandemic crisis, show us all opportunities on digital environment. For me, before crisis, before pandemic, I dislike online conference, online classes. But in this moment, I think different. With Sigradi 2020 was really great experience, but I think these virtual activities, online activities, don't replace face-to-face activities. It's complementary for me. For this reason, I think in the future it's possible to have a lot of activities, hybrid or physical activities. That's my point of view.
There is something I'm not sure what provides it. You can support me about this, but with in the pandemic in the pandemic period, for instance, our school, the Bartlett, just at the end expanded its influence in the educational field in a quite impressive way. Indeed, the amount of students that we had were near to double, if I remember well. Now that we are returning to a normal status, we are in a way we are decreasing the amount of tutors. Sometimes we are decreasing, hopefully, the amount of students, but it's not the same. So that was a scenario that became a quite interesting opportunity. But now we are at the end. We are facing this hybrid way of life instead just the real life. Huh? We are opening the Pandora box in a good way, I think. Huh?
I love that.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it kind of reminded me as participants to many conferences in the past year presenting. I guess like one reason that I would choose virtual conference over physical conference is that actually they waive my registration fee, like including Cat Future, Sea Credit, all of those conferences and guys that you're here. My fee was waived because it's a virtual conference, and that actually makes it socioeconomically more accessible to many people, many more people, including me, who is trying to contribute work. So maybe that's also something very realistic about the Phygital that we can discuss. It's
Yes, and at the same time, it became for us an opportunity to be teaching to guys coming from different parts of the world and simultaneously in these conferences. So it was super interesting as a phenomenon for all of us. Oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe just one last question for me. So there's always this question of whether we should be digitizing architectural space, or how do we actually define a digital space? Is it architecture? Is video game a a spatial experience? Is Mozilla Hub a spatial experience? Like, how would we sit between the physical structure and the digital space, and how do we see them blending together beyond a very superficial AR navigation and whatever? Like, anyone has any opinion over how this exchange may help? I mean, look at the photogrammetry space. It's building up on data samples of physical space, right?
Yes. It was made with an iPad, a real old iPad.
Yeah, so bring the question back to the architecture.
I mean, the odd thing to me is it looks like, these kind of things always look like post-apocalyptic somehow. I mean,
like
it looks like a box.
Like snow, too.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking,
one unique thing that I think was like kind of like a solely digital education problem that didn't exist in like the kind of physical education is like pirating, which is like super annoying but also super interesting, because there's kind of like a, we've found through like other sources and students, I mean, there's kind of like this kind of black market of students passing each other tutorials that they've recorded from the screen. So it's like a super unique problem to to the kind of digital education, and it just made me think of, because we're doing a master's degree now, is like, could someone pirate an entire master's degree?
Well, again, it goes back to the community aspect, because they're paying not only for the education, but they're paying for the connections that they're going to make, and the fact that they get to meet you, and that's a completely different thing.
Yes.
Because I mean, obviously, if someone does that, they don't get like the degree, right? But if someone's taking online at the Bartlett, and then they happen to pass all of that to someone else, there's kind of like this other world of students that are getting the same education.
Dark education.
I'm just wondering about my tutorials in the Bartlett.
They're somewhere on the web.
Where are these tutorials now?
Will you be policing that at all?
How can you really? I mean, there's not really. The most you can do is like, like Netflix. I don't know if you've ever tried to like screen record or screenshot Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, but the screen just goes black. Like they have software on there.
Right.
Yes, exactly. I think that's why we are returning now to the Bartlett to the normal teaching. So in my case, all these skills that I'm teaching inside of the school are going to be fully face-to-face, no recordings. I think maybe it's just because of that. I'm not sure, but it's kind of funny in a weird way, because as you said, now we have this black market running with several tutorials coming from different schools. You can be a master of architecture engineering at the same time.
Yes, I mean, I've seen the messages. I mean, some like more kind of loyal, people. I mean, I've seen these messages that's like, hey, I'll give you this Bartlett tutorial for this design morphine tutorial. It's like a trading game.
Oh my god. Yes, from older times. Yes.
Yeah, but I think Michael is bringing an important question here. Is like, do we have to be accredited? I mean, Design Morphine started as like a private community, and then now it's getting accredited. I think also AA is trying to become a university right now. So it's almost like, if the larger society actually acknowledge that professionalism in certain discipline, then that's what the proprietary in education actually, like, the value is. Right. But do you agree? Like, for instance,
that's something you can't easily copy. I mean, without doing some serious illegal hacking. I mean, you can't just like copy having a degree, right? So, that's kind of
the idea is what do you do with a degree, or what does it mean? I mean, and then
well, yeah,
who's giving
exactly.
the
Like,
degree? So
Yeah,
like
I've never
some
had anybody
people,
ask me for my degree. It's just more about the
Yes,
people you meet
yes,
in those institutions, right? And the
yes.
no, no, but
connections you
for a
make.
lot of
there's a
cases, the degree is very important because the degree grants you certain rights. So I don't know
Mhm.
how people are
In
conscious
architecture, yeah,
about
sure.
that, but in certain places, you cannot be an architect if you don't have a degree. You cannot
yeah.
sign a paper.
Yeah.
So,
It's
like the
something.
fact that a lot of people are not dealing with it, that's a
Mhm.
different story. But the institutions are there for a certain reason, and I think that's important. I come from a background where I didn't pay for my education, and I'm happy that in the internet now you don't have to pay for the education if you want. You can just pay for your internet connection, and you can
Mhm.
learn
Yeah.
anything. But that doesn't mean that you got educated. Like I think we need to divide. Like tutorial is not an education. Like you go to university not to learn how to use a tool. Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
this I would like to make clear because it shouldn't be mixed. Like, you can learn anything on your own if you want now. You can go
Yeah.
on the internet and find it. That was not the case 10 years ago when I started, or 12 years ago when I started.
That's
I was
true.
in Greece, for example, and there was no tutorial online. And if you wanted to learn, you would have to do it on your own, for example.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's,
this
I mean,
changed over time. Yeah, sorry.
no, I mean, there's kind of two. There's like kind of two ways to go about it, and it all kind of comes down to like validation, right? It's like the this the degree means someone basically someone's vouching for you, an institution is vouching for you that you understand stuff. The other way is, without the degree, you can also, it's very possible, and a valid route is like building your reputation and network and whatnot. So there's kind of like two routes to that. But either way, it's kind of like they're all kind of systems of validation. Right? I guess
Mhm.
that's kind of, to me, what those things
Yeah, but
stand
then
for.
again, that's like not related to the institutional part. That's like your personal responsibility. You don't go to, to
Yeah.
the university for that. Like, going to university is a freedom of choice, and whatever you're gonna learn there, it's up to you. Nobody makes you go to university. Now,
Exactly.
what you get from a university, uh, like in terms of the formal part, it's a different story than the skills, in my opinion. Of course, the one validates the other, but the fact that you have working rights and you can go into a union, that's something very important nobody talks about. But that's like, for example, as architects, we have strong unions that, I don't know, maybe that grants for your insurance, things like that, where in some places this is not even considered. And it should be considered, though. Like, it should be brought on the table. And now, on the other spectrum, like the connections or the tools that you're going to learn, or these are details that pertain of your education, but that's not the education. Like, education, at least to me, university level education teaches you how to think, not how to operate
Yeah.
on a software, for example.
Yeah, of
Like,
course. Yeah.
because in 10 years the software right might not exist. What does it mean you're not an architect anymore?
Hmm.
Like, that shouldn't be equal. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
like, we should be very careful about it. Like, we should be able to think as architects or designers beyond any platform. Like, and you should be able, and that's like the university or the education you get.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
of
I mean
course, I mean,
that's
yeah,
why, I mean, kind of like in our program, and I really like the programs that are focusing on all these things, because like you say, it's not about a specific tool or thing. It's a kind of about the mindset and the understanding and the problem solving. I mean, the tool is just a tool. I mean, but it's, so you can do these things in any software or whatever. It's just
exactly.
the it's really just about the mindset. I think
Mm.
Yeah, I
that's
noticed
the
that about your program, Michael. It's really, there's so many different pieces of software that you teach about proceduralism. And it's funny, I'm in kind of the opposite situation, right? I named my school based on a tool.
Well, yes.
But I
Well,
Yeah,
mean,
so I'm more on
yeah,
Michael's side. I like, for
of
me,
course.
like, it's better if we would teach people to become platform agnostic.
Sure,
Because
sure,
if
of
you learn a
course.
programming language, the programming language can apply to any. So if you know Python, as long as there is a Python interpreter, You
Yes.
can operate on different softwares. And
Right. Right.
I was never too fascinated. I mean, I got fascinated about tools, but as I
Yeah.
grew older, I tried not to be fascinated or be passionate about the tool.
Right.
You know, like this does everything and this doesn't do everything. Like, I don't care what its tool does. I care about what I want to do, like for
Right.
my
Of course.
practice or for my research. And then if like Grasshopper or Michael, for example, have a good example. I have built also a small library myself. If you find something that is not there, then you make it yourself. The thing
Sure.
is, like, does where you operate or where you work, does that allow you to do it? Like that's
Right.
a big question, and how that
Yeah.
happens, for
I love
example.
this.
So,
This is really great for me to discuss and to
For what it's
share.
worth,
Uh-huh.
even if Houdini did go away, which I highly doubt, Houdini School is still a cool name.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah,
Just to say my philosophy, I'm even though it doesn't seem like it, I'm in the same mindset where I don't, and I've learned all kinds of software. This isn't my only software. I grew up on Maya. And I firmly believe that the tool is the tool, and the tool only matters with what you do with it. And it is always, like you said, Michael, you're surprised at what people do with your tools. I'm always surprised with what people do with Houdini, you know, especially with the Houdini battles. They have 45 minutes to make something based on a theme, and they're always completely different. So I find it fascinating what the minds, the individual minds come up with. And I do think that's the important part. It's the actual art that matters. And maybe I am, yes, I'm completely biased on one tool. Yes, I'm going to admit that. And I am shameless, to be honest with you. But um, I think, you know, you were saying the ability to make anything. And that is true with Houdini. You absolutely can make anything. There's multiple programming languages, including Python, that you can use. And um,
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Like, when does a school becomes a school of thought? I mean, also maybe a little history. Like UCL was actually kind of established by the school of thought of Jeremy Bentham, which is like utilitarian, liberal thoughts of, and that was actually spread into the school as an education institution. So, like, how do we actually implement skills and transform that into a knowledge of school of thought? I think that's also interesting.
yeah, and what I was going to say is the whole issue about mindset and teaching philosophy, exposing inspiration. All of these things are so, you know, as teachers, we try to get them to make the best work they can. And I hope, you know, even though I am focused on one tool, that actually a mindset does get taught within this tool. So maybe there is something there. So I love this discussion because it kind of, there's like a little tug here between tools and our thinking process. And people have said that the network, the way that you can build networks in Houdini is mirrors the network way of thought, the tangents that we go on when we create.
Yeah, I wanted to say something like that too. Just in terms of, I don't think that a tool and a mindset have to be different. You can learn a mindset through
Mm-hmm.
tool and vice versa. And so I think it's very possible to also teach critical thinking and problem solving through a specific tool. They don't have to be distinct, I
yeah,
guess.
but sometimes like certain tools allow for certain ways of thinking,
Right.
and at least
Sure, yeah.
for all the architects in the room, you know, AutoCAD taught a lot of people
Yeah.
a bad way of design thinking, in my opinion. But like whoever is maybe born in
Revit.
the 80s, 90s, like they had to go through AutoCAD at some point. And then me, as I grew up, I realized, why did we have to go through that? You know, why was that considered design thinking? You know, and that's why I think it's very important to note, yeah, the tools are good, but then the design thinking should be prevailing above the tools. And of course, you need to be proficient on the tool, any tool or many tools.
Many
But it
tools,
cannot
yeah.
be that, because it has happened to me that I had discussions in my grad studies like, oh, how did you learn this? How this tool? How did you have access? And I don't know. For me, working on pirate software was like the norm. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about how do I get access? Like, if you want, I get access, you find access. And I never felt it's bad to do that. You know, nowadays I don't do it, but back in the day, it was a matter of time. Okay, you will find the software somehow and you will learn it. Like, not learning something because you don't have access to it, like because you have to pay, I completely disagree with that. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Access. Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, these
although
things evolve.
sorry?
Look, I'm saying these things evolve. I mean, look at all like the Visual Basic users, right? Like, who uses Visual? No one uses Visual Basic really anymore. Everyone moved to like C# and Python, and then those people are even moving on to the next things. Like, I'm just talking like in scripting. So, you know, like you kind of have to just like keep adapting to the next the next things. You know?
Yeah.
Exactly, but the knowledge carries on. I started with VB scripting in Rhino, so that's how I started programming.
But I doubt you use VB script anymore, do you?
I don't, but I don't think that, you know, I still believe that if you would like to do something, maybe in VB script, or if somebody is very proficient in it, you can do it. And like, it doesn't make it any better if you did it in Grasshopper or somewhere. The thing is, what are you doing? Like, in 2008, a lot of people were like against Grasshopper because it's not fast, it's not this, it's not that. And then they proved themselves wrong because the community grew and then the tool grew. But then at that time, when I did my first, you know, workshop, people were like, no, you should do programming the hard way, not like Grasshopper. And like, the same people turned into visual scripting. And I was always kind of more open about things. I'm like, you know, I will use this if I can do whatever I want, and I can use the other thing if I can do whatever. Like, the idea is, what is your design objective? What are you trying to put out there? And for me,
a large reason. That's a large reason why I made like Pufferfish for that example. It's like, I wanted people to focus more on like the thinking and the idea rather than like the stupid like technicalities that are hard to overcome.
I think what Evangelos is bringing onto the table with AutoCAD is that maybe what's intrinsic to the tool, the principles and the thoughts that's been put into the tool, can only be unveiled over time. It's maybe not because of the tool was bad, but because we are living in a different time, and that reveals what has to be changed in the society and the way we're thinking about design and the way we're dealing with things. So I feel like maybe as we progress, we will also discover what's intrinsically about Houdini, about Maya, about any other software that is making us think in certain way. Like, for instance, Google Doc. I keep thinking in this type of linear typing way if I practice too much in Google Docs. So I feel like, yeah,
I think in programming is a great example, and Word docs are a great example of, you know, it's the algorithms that matter in the programming, not the scripting language that you use. And same with Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Like, again, those are even easier examples of what you're saying about how the tool is not the important part. And, you know, teaching at a university versus, you know, making a school that focuses on one tool, and the university I teach at is still biased on one particular tool. Even though they offer all these electives on other tools, most of the classes are in one tool. And I think that the university professors are stuck in one particular tool. And I'd like to see more of the open-mindedness if you're going to be in a university, which is a completely different type of thing than a focused tool-based program, then you have to expose the students to everything that's out there, I think.
Totally. I mean, I agree, but the problem is that a lot of people don't know the program. So for me, a good example is Blender. So Blender is an open source software, it's very strong. In very few schools you can see people teaching Blender. So for me, people should start with Blender because that's accessible to anyone, and then you can move on to Houdini, to wherever you want. But then there are not a lot of people that are educated on Blender, so they don't teach it, which is problematic.
I think that I mean the Blender thing is like, it's a great piece of software, but it also comes down to like, I personally think it's not taught often because like the professional industry hasn't adopted it.
Yeah, because nobody makes money off of it.
For whatever
No,
reason.
it's a very simple reason. Nobody makes money off of it.
Oh, because it's open source. Oh my God.
Yeah, but you know, like
It's kind of true. It's kind of true though.
But also, like a lot of these companies and offices, they have like these kind of fan software fan base. I mean, Maya has been around for so long. Houdini's been around since I think like 1996, something like that. I mean, which is kind of crazy. So it's also that thing too. Like things take a while to catch on. It's not like Auto just made AutoCAD and then the next day everyone was using AutoCAD. Things take time to
yeah, but like Chuck Eastman developed the BIM software almost concurrently to AutoCAD, but nobody worked on that. So Glide, for example, the first BIM software is as old as AutoCAD, but AutoCAD was the MVP, let's say. So, and then the other.
I'll tell you, because Autodesk is, Autodesk is very good at it. I mean, their strategy is to get into the offices, into the professional industry, because then that's what the schools want to train for, right? Because they want to train to go.
They were very successful about it, like I believe, but that doesn't mean that should be the case. That's what I'm saying. The AutoCAD was the easiest way to transition from paper drawings to a digital drawing. So who would want to change their way of thinking, which would be the BIM thinking, back in the 90s? So in many ways, that's why they made it, and they made it across the whole AC. But that doesn't mean we should be repeating over and over the same bad paradigm. That's what I believe. That's what I'm saying is criticality in thinking, design thinking, very important, I believe. So a lot of people are teaching digital tools without using any digital tool, which is absurd in many schools. So people are talking about computational design and they don't know how to code, which is interesting,
I mean, that actually reminded me of the Zoom conversation that we had at the beginning. Like, I think it was Michael who said Zoom was not friendly to all because of certain physical constraint and other technical difficulties. But actually, if you compare that to Microsoft Teams, I feel like Zoom is much more accessible, not because of the interface, but because of its business model. Like Microsoft was definitely B2B. Like it's running on institutes that are going to pay the biggest package of using the Microsoft service. So as individuals, you will actually most likely be on Zoom.
Well, what I meant to, I mean, I think Zoom is accessible. It just that for some, the point I was making then was that like, if for some people not even Zoom is accessible, what could they do with like VR learning? You know what I'm saying? So that was the kind of point of that. Like I prefer Zoom above all, but just because it's so easy and straightforward and it works really well. We've tried other things like Click Meeting, which has a really nice interface and a lot of nice features, but like it's always dropping. The connection's always dropping. I mean, Zoom really has a pretty solid way of doing things. I mean, the reason for Teams is like you really need like that kind of, you need that extra like ecosystem, which is like the things, all the other things you can do there, like the way like chats and servers and channels and all these things like kind of all connected together. Of course, you could do like Zoom and then like Discord, right? But it's like, if you're doing that for like a master's degree or something like that, things need to be like protected. And if you're in the umbrella of Teams, it's like one protected package. I mean, you can't even access someone's, Team server without having an edu email from that place. Stuff like that. But now when you start to segment it, it just becomes difficult, I think, to keep track of. It's like, okay, we got to protect Zoom over here. We got to protect Discord over here. People got to sign up for this, make an account for this other one. So that's what I think is the nice thing about Teams. And I'm not like saying like I'm a huge, I'm not walking around with like a I love Teams t-shirt or anything, because it definitely has a lot of issues that I wish it didn't have. But the nice thing is just kind of like that kind of all in one package. Your email, your calendars, your meetings, your videos, your channels, all these kind of things.
I think this actually answered part of the question to what Evangelos was bringing onto the table. For the fact that it's not just the tool and what the tool actually does, it's how the organization actually realizes the value in the tools that they create, basically determine the type of user groups that they're going to be based on and how they would connect the ecologies with one another. But I think Evangelos has to run. And Alberto was just telling me that that Bartlett is closing.
Yes, it's closing. I'm facing the
physical constraints.
Yeah, physical constraints.
Physical confrontation right now.
Thank you so much for everybody's contribution.
That was great.
Yeah.
Really great experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for organizing.
Thank you so much for spending the time and effort. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully, although the term Phygital emerged in 2007, and we're still talking about it like today, which is 2021, and we hope that this roundtable has some Phygital thoughts for everyone to bring home, beyond just like a simple physical digital exchange. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
What a precious opportunity. And I hope to be in touch with you.
Right.
And as well, thank you for all the contributions today.
Yeah.
It was really, really interesting. And we think that we are thinking about how we are learning and teaching and designing the future. So thank you very much.
Shall we take a last selfie before we leave?
Yeah.
Like the camera's here. Let's take a selfie.
I teleported.
Where are you?
Oh wait, I'm here.
Yes.
Camera's here.
Maybe, yes, come with us.
Okay, is everyone here? Okay, maybe I have to be way more in front.
Yes, and maybe you must. There.
This avatar came out pretty good.
Yeah.
It looks like, I don't know how it did it.
All right. I know. Sometimes it's creepy how real.
Jeez.
Cheese.
Did we have? Okay, I'm gonna take one more.
Yes, we can't cheese.
Yeah, I was smiling behind my camera, so David can't control himself anymore. But wait, let me take one more.
Another one. The last chance.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay.
Until next time. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Take care.